Hi, I'm Rich Ribeiro. The Terrell Fund is committed to educating the public about the need to support New Jersey's infants and toddlers right from the start. That's why we're proud to support the important early childhood programming produced by the Caucus Educational Corporation.
This special edition of One-on-One with Steve Adubato is brought to you from the Tisch WNET studios at Lincoln Center. Funding has been provided by Wells Fargo, Seton Hall University, where leaders learn, New Jersey Resources, St. Joseph's Health, a passion for healing. It's what's inside us. The Terrell Fund, supporting right from the start NJ, New Jersey Sharing Network, dedicated to saving lives through organ and tissue donation. And by the Fidelco Group. Promotional support provided by Jaffe Communications, where business, media, and government converge in New Jersey. And by New Jersey Monthly, the magazine of the Garden State, available at newsstands.
This is One-on-One. I'm an equal American just like you are.
The jobs of tomorrow are not the jobs of yesterday.
Look at this. You got this?
Here it is, man. Look at that.
Life without dance is boring.
I don't care how good you are or how good you think you are, there is always something to learn.
Do you enjoy talking politics?
No.
People call me because they feel nobody's paying attention.
Our culture, I don't think, has ever been tested the way it's being tested right now.
That's a good question. High five.
We're pleased to welcome Michael Frungillo, who is president of Gourmet Dining with a long history in the city. We're actually taping in Newark, New Jersey. Michael, real quick, Gourmet Dining is?
We're a family-owned food service company, food service management on site, mainly in the four-year higher ed marketplace in New Jersey.
Been around for a few years?
90 years in Newark, Steve.
Who started it? By the way, I know the family. I'm not going to say it's an Italian thing, but there's history. Describe who started it and when.
So my great-great-grandparents, when they came over from Italy, had a store on...
From the Naples area they come over?
Napoli, yeah.
What a guess.
Avellino.
Avellino. That's the same province,
okay.
But we will not do that show. We'll do that another one. Go ahead.
Yeah, so they had come over in the early 1900s with the general store. And then it's an interesting story because a brother and a sister married a brother and a sister, so we're very close. Frungillo brother and sister married Finelli brother and sister.
Got it.
And the family just worked together in the store their whole lives. And when my father was younger, when they moved out of Newark, he wanted to come back to Newark. So his way of coming back to Newark was working at my Uncle Ronnie's store, which is actually in Belleville, but still close by.
Belleville, which we often call a suburb of Newark. It's not technically a suburb. But the part I'm fascinated by is the connection between you guys at Gourmet Dining and institutions of higher learning. One is the Seton Hall connection that we know. But the other one is, again, an institution right around the corner from us where we're taping at NJTV, is Rutgers Newark. The dining hall there, it isn't just that you have that service, there's some stuff you're doing there which is important.
Yeah, so...
It's called Stonesby Hall?
Stonesby Hall, we just renovated. So on the meal plan, the main dining hall is your all-you-can-eat dining hall, and you got to eat there every day. So we try to make it special every day by bringing in local vendors, by buying local produce. You know, everything local is very important to us. And we also want to have hundreds of items, as if you could go to any restaurant in the area, you know?
At a college?
At a college, yeah. Rotisserie chicken, carvery, it's like you're going to a wedding every day. That's how we try to do it.
But explain this to us. There's technology involved here. As I'm reading it, there's more and more technology is impacting the food service industry. Talk to us about that.
Yeah, well, definitely technology we try to use in the dining hall where we have the diner. We have a diner area in the dining hall. So instead of having students line up and try to order, we have kiosks. So they can type in they want a hamburger with fries, no cheese. And instead of waiting in line, now they can sit down. They can go through the cafeteria, get other food, and then come back when their food's ready at that station. So that's one of the ways as a service way we're trying to integrate technology.
But the other thing, Michael, we do a lot of programming around food insecurity. The fact that so many people are suffering. There's food waste, and there's food insecurity issues that you guys deal with.
Yeah. So a fascinating fact, 40% of the country, 40% of the food produced in this country is thrown in the garbage. 40% of the food in the country. That my brother's here backstage.
Your brother's here, yeah.
We were just talking about that. And that's an astonishing fact. And now in Newark alone, 70% of families in Newark don't know where the next meal's coming from, or they're not having
And we're
quality.
wasting all this food?
It's going in the garbage.
So then talk about what needs to be done.
Yeah, so the first thing we're doing is we partner with a company called the Food Recovery Network, who's at all of our college cafeterias. And what they do is when we produce in bulk. So when there's extra food, we cool it properly. It's sealed, and then they come in and they track how much they have, and they get it to local soup kitchens. We do St. John's here in Newark.
It's a great soup kitchen.
Yeah, and other throughout New Jersey. The second thing we're doing, which we're rolling out in the spring, is we want to have a Blue Apron type ready-to-go meal for under $10 for a family of 4. So they can sign up whatever meal they want. We'll make it simple to do. Maybe 8 or 9 ingredients, not too difficult, 4 or 5 steps to cook it. But a family for 4 can eat a fully nutritious meal for under $10, and that's what our biggest program that we're going to push forward.
The other thing I've always known about your family, and this is really, it's one thing to talk about social issues, the needs that people have, but the economic impact, I know that that's a big part of it. A lot of people are employed, right? But you also have a big economic impact because of the work you're doing with institutions of higher learning. By the way, we're also seeing New York, so you have a
Manhattan College.
But talk about the economic impact, if you will, of what you're doing.
So the most successful program we've done for local impact is when you're on a meal plan, we have guaranteed revenue comes to us. You swipe a meal, you go to Stonesby, you go to the cafeteria at Seton Hall, whatever it is. We're sharing that meal swipe with a local restaurant. For example, in Newark, we just partnered with Annabelle's Kitchen. So what you can do is go to Annabelle's Kitchen, you swipe your Rutgers meal plan there, and you can eat, and we share that revenue with Annabelle's Kitchen.
Where did that whole thing come from?
I think.
Because wouldn't you want to say, we're going to keep all of it ourselves?
It's just important to us to give back to the community, Steve. This is how we are. My brother and I are very fortunate. We grew up in a family that was successful in business and worked very hard together, and it just drives us to give back to the community in the same way.
The other part, we're doing a series called Making a Difference, and the other thing that strikes me is some of the partnerships that you have with some other entities. Let's talk about it's AeroFarms. You have a partnership with Newark's Clean Coffee and a few others. St. John's Soup Kitchen. What about all these community partnerships?
I mean, it's important to us, and we constantly drives us to grow them. We want to help. There's no reason why we're being successful on campus and the community around us can't be successful, and the vendors around us can't be successful. So we're constantly seeking other Newark vendors to participate with us, specifically in this local vendor meal swipe, which is extremely successful. At Rowan, I'm not going to name the local vendor, but he wrote us a letter, we saved his business. By sending students to his
So it's
restaurant.
not dog eat dog?
No, not at all. It's the opposite. Where you would be competing for like a swipe or a credit card swipe, we're saying take our meal plan swipe.
Last question. A lot of what you do has to do with customizing what the needs of a particular institution of higher learning is, that campus. What does that really mean?
Well, it's
not every campus is the same?
They're not the same. They're not. And it's interesting because we have 17 schools in New Jersey. They compete with each other for students. But each place, you'll find some elements. And the most important element you're going to find, Steve, is the customer service element. And the reason we have it is we care about our people. They're the most important people, the most important thing to us. And we have all of our people are represented by the IBW. We have a great relationship with them, a great partnership with them. Yeah, right. The union. And that partnership.
International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers.
Yeah, 1158 out of Clifton. So, you got the people, the right partner. Yeah. The institution as a partner, and it's special. Every place we're at is very special.
So Michael Frungillo is the president of Gourmet Dining. His family came here from Avellino. That happens to be a province, in Naples, and the rest is history. See, a lot of contributions in this country. Michael, thank you, buddy.
Thank you, Steve.
Stay with us. We'll be right back right after this.
To see more one-on-one with Steve Adubato programs, visit us online at steveadubato.org. If you would like to express an opinion, email us at info@caucusnj.org. Find us on Facebook at facebook.com/Steve Adubato, PhD, and follow us on Twitter at Steve Adubato.
Ricky Riccardi, Director of Research Collections, the Louis Armstrong House Museum. Good to see you.
Yeah, thanks, Steve.
All the way from Toms River, New Jersey.
Born and raised.
And by the way, it's out in Queens.
The museum's in Corona, Queens.
Yeah. Louis Armstrong.
Yeah.
Died in 1971. His greatest contribution to American music and culture is?
Turn on the radio. And I can almost guarantee you anything that comes on, I can trace it back to Louis Armstrong. In the 1920s, when he began recording, his innovations as a trumpet player and as a vocalist just changed the game. I mean, more than just jazz, he kind of wrote the rules of American popular music. Sinatra learned to sing from him, Tony Bennett and Billie Holiday, any musician you could think of. I mean, just the art of the solo. It could be Charlie Parker on the saxophone, it could be Jimi Hendrix on the guitar. It all comes from Armstrong, and just his rhythmic feel, this feel of swing. You know, we think of swing dancing, we think of swing music, but any good pop music swings. You pat your foot to it, you want to dance to it, you know when it's stiff, you know when it's swinging. Louis Armstrong taught the world how to swing. So to me, I know I'm biased, but he's the most influential musician.
When did you become so interested in him, and why?
I was born in 1980, so Armstrong died in 71, never met him, never saw him, but when I was 15 years old, I saw a movie, The Glenn Miller Story.
Yeah.
Jimmy Stewart. Armstrong comes out in the middle and just blows me away. I said, man, this guy's great. So I started listening to him, and the recordings, I didn't know what to listen for, but everything I was listening to was all from the 1950s. And it just changed my life. So I started reading about Armstrong. Now, this is the mid-1990s, and the standard narrative was Louis Armstrong, genius in the 1920s, does everything I just said, changed the world, but then becomes a commercial, sellout, Uncle Tom, this and that.
Really?
Oh, yeah, no, that was the narrative for years. So I'm a high school kid. I'm reading this stuff, and I'm saying, nah, I don't believe it. So I became fixated.
Didn't you write you were at Rutgers? You did a research.
I got a master's in jazz history and research.
Did you write your master's thesis on Louis Armstrong?
My thesis was on the last 25 years in Armstrong's life. And then I graduated in 2005. I started an Armstrong blog in 2007. I got a book deal with Pantheon in 2008. I started working for the Armstrong House in 2009. So my book came out in 2011. It's called What a Wonderful World, the Magic of Louis Armstrong's Later Years. I'm writing a second book on Armstrong right now on his middle years. I'm teaching an Armstrong course at Queens College. I have 2 Armstrong reissues coming out for Universal I co-produced in February. I'm all Armstrong all the time.
Tell folks about the museum, what they can see there.
So Louis Armstrong, in 1943, he married his 4th wife, Lucille.
Is that right?
Subject for another interview. They got married, and by this point, Louis was on the road 300 nights a year. He had a little apartment in Harlem. He didn't care about a home. So he gets married to Lucille. Their honeymoon is 6 straight months of one-nighters. And Lucille says, I'm not going to stand for this. So she was from Queens.
One night is where he's performing.
Every night, a different city, living out of a suitcase, out of a bus, all that stuff. So Lucille found a house in Corona, Queens, in an Irish, Italian, African-American neighborhood, moves in, puts the down payment, doesn't even tell Louis. He comes home one day and shows up at the house, this brand new house, and his first thought was, he tells the cab driver, he goes, oh man, quit kidding, take me to the address I wrote down. Because he was born in such poverty. I mean, he had an outhouse in the backyard and a 4th grade education, all this stuff in New Orleans. New Orleans. Okay. So his whole life was poverty. Now he's got some success. So he's never had a home. So here's this little Archie Bunker house in the middle of Queens, and to him it's a mansion. So he moves in. And as famous as he was, I mean, we're talking about movies of Bing Crosby, and he goes to the Congo and stops the Civil War in 1961. He's shaking hands with the Pope. But when he wants to go home, he wants to be with real people, working class people, black, white, everybody together. So he always said he saw 3 generations grow up in Corona. So Lucille, she began to get the itch. She wanted something a little bigger, a little better. Louis wouldn't budge. So he died in 1971, and it turns out he was a pack rat. He saved all of his recordings, newspaper clippings. He made scrapbooks, his trumpets. So
is that what is in the museum?
So we're kind of a 2-headed monster. The museum itself is the Armstrong House. No one's lived there since Louis and Lucille. You show up, it's a perfectly preserved 1960s home. Textured wallpaper, blue kitchen, Sub-Zero refrigerators, vacuum cleaners.
The way it was.
You walk in, you feel like Louis and Lucille just stepped out for a minute. But the other half, I'm the director of research collections. Right now, the collections are over at Queens College. We're open by appointment only, but it's the world's largest archives for a single jazz musician. So we have all that stuff. He used to make reel-to-reel tapes of him telling dirty jokes, advocating for marijuana, practicing, arguing with his wife. He would just let the recorder
It's on tape?
run. We have it all. We have it all on tape. His whole life. That's how I wrote my book, and although it's all on tape. We have one tape where he gets into a vicious argument with his wife, Lucille, and she doesn't know he's taping. And when she realizes it, she tells him, turn off that tape recorder. And he says, no, it's for posterity. So he was so...
Do you think he thought that this would be Interesting and/or relevant for others?
He knew that he conquered poverty and racism and everything else. He changed the sound of American popular music, and he wanted to be in control of his story. So in the pre-social media days and everything else, he made sure that it was all laid out.
Real quick, What a Wonderful World is important because?
Well, it's Armstrong's most iconic song, but the backstory is interesting because
Give me the short version.
The short version is when it was released, it kind of bombed. Armstrong was coming off Hello Dolly and banjos and show tunes and all that stuff. And a producer named Bob Thiel and a songwriter named George David Weiss, they realized the country was fractured. Vietnam, race wars, you know, very similar to today. And they said, we need Louis Armstrong. So they wrote this song, What a Wonderful World. They figured Louis is the guy. Louis took one look at the lyrics and said, this is about Corona. It became his anthem, his theme song. Every time he sang that song, he said it took him right back to his Corona Queens neighborhood. So he records it, and the record company thought it was going to bomb, so they put no promotion into it. The thing tanked in America. Good Morning Vietnam. In 1986, the Robin Williams movie, Barry Levinson movie, put it in a montage, and all of a sudden, 16 years after Armstrong's death, it was on the charts, and now there's no end in sight. So more
how long do you think you could talk about Armstrong?
How long you got?
Forget about here. You could talk about him in the most compelling, interesting way.
This is what I'm doing. I'm teaching a 15-week course at Queens College. Every night is 3 hours, and every night I'm like, oh man, I'm out of time. So,
Ricky Riccardi.
Riccardi, yeah, not Riccardi.
Don't worry, I get these things. We're Italian. We understand each other.
We got it.
Not that I don't understand people or not. I just want to share. Paisan. Director of Research Collections, Louis Armstrong House Museum in beautiful Corona, Queens here in New York. Thank you so much, buddy.
My pleasure.
Well done.
Thanks.
We're right back right after this.
To see more one-on-one with Steve Adubato programs, visit us online at steveadubato.org. If you would like to express an opinion, email us at info@caucusnj.org. Find us on Facebook at facebook.com/Steve Adubato PhD and follow us on Twitter at Steve Adubato.
A big theme here at the NJEA Convention, the 164th annual convention, is communication. And the guy who knows more about communication than just about anyone I know is Steve Baker, Director of Communications at the New Jersey Education Association. We've been here many, many years doing this convention. I don't think I've ever seen, I mean, there's always energy here, but there's a lot of energy this year because?
Tremendous energy here, Steve, from our members. They're excited to be here. This is a keystone event for them each year. This is where they come together, they meet their colleagues, they network, they learn, they see what's the latest and the greatest in education. Our members love to be ahead of the game, and this is the place where they come to get that way.
Yeah, we were just talking before we got on the air. There's a tour, there's an exhibit, if you will. It's called The Awakening. It's a walking tour. We're going to get some video of it.
Sure.
What is it, and why does it matter so much to you?
That's so important, and we're so proud of that this year. The Awakening is a walking tour that allows our members to see the world through the eyes of some of our students, whether they are students of color, whether they're LGBTQ. It helps us to see what they see in the world. It helps us to think about the choices. Well, it poses some questions. How would you deal with a situation? How would you deal with a situation where a parent called and was concerned that they'd heard that a student in your class had two fathers? How would you deal with a student who came and said, you've always known me as male, but I want to be called by female pronouns? We believe that cultural competency, we believe that understanding the needs of our students is just critically important to the educational process. You have to meet students where they are, you have to understand where they are, and you have to educate the whole student. And so we believe that by exposing our members to that, by letting them see that and forcing us all to think more deeply about those issues, we create stronger, more welcoming, more affirming schools that really do just a tremendous job of educating every student who walks through the doors.
You know what's so interesting about that? I don't know how many years ago, 5, 10, I'm not sure you may have had an exhibit like this, but to do this now, to me, and to many I'm sure would demonstrate, you're constantly evolving. The organization's evolving. Like, what is the convention going to be? And by the way, the convention theme is all about social justice.
Absolutely.
Connected to that?
Well, listen, we understand that the conditions in the world, the conditions in the community are the conditions where our students are learning. They're the conditions where our schools exist. So if you can't deal with poverty in your communities, if you can't deal with opportunity in your communities, you make it that much more difficult to give your children, your students, a place where they can thrive and succeed. I'll give you an example. Take something like the $15 an hour minimum wage.
Yes.
That doesn't impact most of our members, and even the ones that it impacts, we have collective bargaining. We have ways to deal with that. But we have fought for the $15 minimum wage because we have students whose parents are working 2 and 3 jobs trying to make ends meet. We know our students would be better off, that they would be able to learn more if their parents had the opportunity to be home more, to spend more time at home and help out in those ways. It's not that the parents are doing anything wrong, they have no choice. We want to help those parents have a choice so that they can help their students thrive. We all win if we do that.
You know, Steve mentions the $15 an hour minimum wage, which will be one of the many issues in 2018 that the state will consider. And one assumes that the debate around that issue could and likely be very different because with Phil Murphy as governor, it may be a different discussion. People have different points of view on this. Your thoughts about soon to be, as we're taping this program, Governor Murphy, particularly as it relates to education?
Well, we couldn't be more enthusiastic about it. As you know, we were one of the first groups to get on board and endorse Phil Murphy. I believe it was October 9th of 2016. So we were on board early. Our members have been all in.
What did you see in him? What did you see in Murphy?
What we saw in Murphy, somebody who respected educators, somebody who genuinely wanted to learn about the issues and make good policy decisions, somebody who supports public education on a fundamental level, and somebody who's willing to engage in a real conversation. That's been missing, and we really look forward to having a partner in the State House who is going to make good policy decisions that I believe are going to be separated from the politics of some of this and really focus on the policy of what's good for students, what's good for schools.
See, let me ask you this. I mentioned this to Ed Richardson, the executive director of the NJEA. The NJEA, with 200,000 plus members, plus families, represent a lot of folks. You do get involved in politics.
Absolutely.
You pick your spots, and sometimes people like, hey, why are they involved in this or that race or situation? Explain why it's so important to be involved in electoral politics.
Because politics are involved in education. Everything we do, the curriculum that we teach, those are the results of political decisions. Funding for our schools, support for the profession, standards for the profession. Politics affects everything about the day-to-day lives and the professional lives of our members. We have to be involved. It's our obligation as an advocacy organization to stand up for our members, to stand up for our students, to stand up for their families. If we don't do it, then other people who aren't experts on public education are making all the decisions about public education. That's bad for policy.
And some Democrats who would argue, by the way, full disclosure, the NJEA is one of the biggest supporters of NJTV News, of our broadcasting as well at the Caucus Educational Corporation. Some Democrats who argue, you know, the NJEA is supposed to support Democrats across the board because we're with them. Even some Democrats in the highest positions in the state legislature, more specifically the Senate president. You buy that?
We have never been a part of a political party. We have always endorsed people based on their positions on the issues. They interview with our members, and they have to prove through their positions, through their votes, through their actions in office, if they're incumbents, that they are genuine supporters of public education. If they don't, they're not going to earn our members' support. But it doesn't matter if you're a Democrat or Republican and an independent. We endorsed a Green candidate in Atlantic County for freeholder this year. We don't look at the letter after the name, we look at the record underneath the name, and that's really what matters. It always has, always will. We're always going to be pro-public education, and it's the obligation of the candidates to make sure that they're pro-public education. That's what matters for our members.
Final question, 2018, the #1 issue for educators in this state should be?
Continue to make New Jersey's public schools the best in the nation. Everything we do is about that. Every time we endorse a candidate, every time we take a position on a bill, it's all about building the best public schools because our members want to be proud of where they work. They want to provide a great education for their students. And so while the underlying issues change all the time, the main issue never changes, great public schools.
One more quickie.
Sure.
Different ways of communicating, more complex, more interesting than ever before?
Oh, it's a whole new world out there, and it's just tremendous. The ways that we can communicate with our members, with the public. You know, everybody has a different way they're getting their information. Everybody's accessing their information in different places. You have to be a little bit of everywhere. You have to be everywhere all the time. It's a challenge, but it's a thrill.
And you also have a great series called Classroom Close-Up. And we consistently feature some of those educators. Classroom Close-Up, 15 Emmy Awards dedicated to
the teachers and education support professionals of NJEA. They do great work, and we couldn't be more proud of taking the opportunity to feature that work and to highlight what they do. That's what it's all about.
And can be seen on NJTV, the public television station in the state of New Jersey. Steve, thanks so much, buddy.
Thank you so much, Steve. Appreciate the time. All right.
One-on-One with Steve Adubato has been a production of the Caucus Educational Corporation, celebrating over 25 years of broadcast excellence. This special edition of One-on-One with Steve Adubato is brought to you from the Tisch WNET studios at Lincoln Center. Funding has been provided by Wells Fargo, Seton Hall University, New Jersey Resources, St. Joseph's Health, the Turl Fund, supporting Right from the Start NJ, New Jersey Sharing Network, and by the Fidelco Group. Transportation provided by Airbrook Limousine, serving the metropolitan New York, New Jersey area.
Hi, I'm Cecilia Zalkin. It costs much more to care for an infant than for an older child, and many New Jersey child care centers don't have the funding they need. Because of this, many children in New Jersey don't have their basic needs met. Right from the Start NJ is dedicated to supporting this vulnerable population, children from birth to age 3. We know that the early years are the most critical, and we believe that every child deserves a bright beginning and a healthy future.